Chapter 14, The Right Thing to Do. Well, at least we sold the parrot, said Mark positively. He and Benji were just entering the schoolyard Monday morning. Benji's shoulders slumped. What difference does it make? You heard Professor P. I'll deal with you on Monday. Maybe she likes Winston Churchill so much that she'll just laugh the whole thing off, Mark suggested hopefully. Benji snorted. Fat chance. And even if she doesn't get us kicked off the show, what makes you think there's going to be a show for us to get kicked off of? I'll bet WGRK isn't too thrilled that we wrecked the sound effects console, practically trashed the studio, and turned their valuable broadcast time into the nut house hour. It's Ellen's dad, said Mark. He couldn't cancel us. Where would his daughter do the big yawn? Benji shook his head. Ellen's dad is only the station manager. If the guys who own WGRK want to get rid of us, he has to do what they say. Face it, Kids View is as good as gone. They looked around the schoolyard. Fuzzy and Puffy were still very much in control, and the slogan-decorated students ran, played, and hung out in the same atmosphere of nervousness that had prevailed all last week. And there was Brad, circulating in his usual manner. At that moment, he was supervising the raising of a huge Puffy for Emperor banner which would flutter from the chain-link fence. I see a week off the air hasn't hurt Fuzzy and Puffy, Benji commented it darkly. Ellen Louise jogged up, a small bruise on her forehead where she had collided with Mark. Hi, guys. What's new? Listen to her, said Benji in disgust. The world ended Saturday, and she wants to know what's new. Oh, nothing much. The professor's going to kill us for what we did to her research assignment and her radio, which means we'll wind up kicked off the show. But that's okay. After Saturday's little effort, we've lost the show anyway. That's what's new. You don't fool me, Benji Driver, said Ellen Louise. I know what's really bothering you. Your pride is hurt, because after shooting your mouth off to all of us for so long, you went on the radio Saturday and you left dead air. Benji hung his head. How could I have done it? Look at it this way, Mark said soothingly. Dead air was a lot better than what came after it. Benji winced in real pain. And now it's all over. I blew it. And all I ever wanted to do was be a great broadcaster like Eldridge Kestenbaum. But Benji, said Ellen Louise, Kids View isn't canceled. We've been renewed for another year. He stared at her. What? It just happened this morning, she explained. At first, the WGRK owners were really mad, so they scrapped Kids View. But this morning at 7 o'clock, Mr. Whitehead phoned my dad. He was really freaking out. I could hear him yelling right through the receiver. He said if they touched Kids View, he'd switch all his business to WMEB. He said that Kids View was perfect, and that the three of us are the best kids in the world. Even me? Blurted out Mark. Yeah, Ellen Louise laughed with delight. And then he bought all our advertising time for the next year, right on the spot. Would you believe that of Mr. Whitehead? Good old Mr. Whitehead, Benji cheered. What a great guy going to bat for us like that. We're saved. He pulled up short, his face suddenly gray. No, we're not. We've still got Professor P to deal with. Aw, Ellen, why did you have to tell us the good news? It's just going to feel worse when she has us kicked off the show. The bell rang, and the three producers joined the general swarm around the doors. Benji felt as though he were going to his own execution. There was a ringing in his ears as he entered the classroom. It was stress. He'd been under too much pressure lately. Maybe people always heard ringing when they were about to lose their shows. Then he realized that the ringing was real, and that it was coming from the pit. The sound rose higher and higher in pitch and suddenly ceased. All at once, the 5 pit people put their hands over their ears, their faces twisted with obvious agony. Arthur Katz stood up to face them, his eyes narrowed. You must think I'm really stupid. There was no response from the pit people, who continued to writhe in pain. "You're trying to get me to think that you've got ultrasound, so I'll make a jerk of myself in front of everybody," said Arthur. "Well, it won't work. I see the wire coming out of your desk. It's hooked up to some speakers. So find another patsy. You're not fooling Arthur Katz." As soon as he had turned his back on them, the closest pit person to the window produced a slingshot and fired a small pebble at the glass vase standing on the sill. Crash! The vase shattered loudly, dropping glass fragments like rain onto the ledge. Arthur wheeled and gawked at the broken vase. Only one thing could shatter glass with such sudden violence. "Ultrasound! The pit's got ultrasound!" He rushed to the back corner of the room. "You're under arrest!" "What?" "I'm making a citizen's arrest. Get your hands up." For the first time all year, the pit people lost control. It was like the WGRK laugh track all over again as they abandoned their seats and rolled around on the floor of the pit, howling. Kitty litter stuck to their clothing as they rollicked, helpless with mirth. Arthur just stood there, face flaming red, until Ellen Louise gently escorted him back to his seat. Ms. P came in, and Benji steeled himself for the beginning of the end. Mark elbowed him in the ribs. Even Ellen Louise looked extremely anxious. 0 hour had arrived. The teacher faced her class squarely. "I'd be interested to see how many of you got 100% on the independent research assignment this week." There was an uncomfortable murmur. In all the excitement of the disastrous weekend, Benji had forgotten to do the sheet at all. This was not going to help. "I have to admit it," the teacher went on. "I wanted the seminar to promote creative problem solving, and I got exactly what I asked for. But you all know that homework means doing something yourself, not having someone else do it for you. Benji, Ellen Louise, Mark, do you realize that what you have done is very wrong?" There were 3 shamefaced. "Yes, ma'ams." "Well," she began. "Here it comes," thought Benji. The judge was about to pronounce the sentence. The end of his career as a broadcaster was at hand. He wanted to get up and scream, "Beat me, torture me, stick flaming bamboo under my fingernails, or even make me do extra work for the seminar. But please, please, I beg you, have mercy and don't take me off the radio." "Don't do it again." Benji gawked. "That's it? Don't do it again? That's all?" Mark put up his hand. "But aren't you mad about all the things we did with your radio?" Benji kicked him savagely under the desks. "Shut up," he rasped. Ms. P looked Mark straight in the eye. "Don't do that again either." Mark crossed his heart and hoped to die. Ms. P smiled wistfully and reached into her purse. "You got a postcard today, all the way from Honolulu. It's from your old teacher, Miss Gucci." She held up a card with a picture of Waikiki Beach and read, "Dear class, how are you? I hope everyone is getting along well. Hawaii is wonderful. Perhaps you'll all come here and visit me one day, but not for a year or two, because I'm planning to travel around the world. Aloha, Maria Gucci." Ms. P looked at their delighted faces and sighed deeply. "I'm sorry. I guess I must seem childish, but this postcard makes me jealous. Oh, not of Miss Gucci's new wealth. You see, you're my very first students, so you're special to me, and I always think of myself as your only teacher. But I have to accept the fact that I'm not. Miss Gucci was first, and you obviously liked her and had a special relationship with her, and that makes me sad. I can't help it." She lapsed into a gloomy silence. Benji felt his heart swell. Okay, she was the professor, and she'd saddled them with the seminar, and had generally been a pain. But she was also the person who, after 6 miserable weeks, had bought Winston Churchill. And this morning she had forgiven the unforgivable, which meant another whole year of Kids View for the producers who, let's face it, deserve to take the big fall. She shouldn't be allowed to be sad. No, he cried, leaping dramatically to his feet. You've got it all wrong. Miss Gucci wasn't bad, but she was just running an ordinary 2-bit broken down little class. We're a seminar because of you, Ms. P. We're somebody, and you're the only teacher for us. He sat down amid applause. Ms. P dabbed at her eyes. That was beautiful, Benji, and I appreciate it. She blew her nose. Now, let's get organized. Take out your independent research assignments. Benji groaned and raised his hand. I didn't do it. I can't believe it, said Mark as the producers went out for recess. We got away with cheating on homework, messing with her radio, and getting her into a super riot. But she gave us a detention for forgetting to do the independent research assignment. I'm pretty sure she's crazy. You should have done your homework, said Ellen Louise. I did. Well, of course you did, said Mark. Ellen Louise sighed happily. Kids View is safe for another year, and Miss P still likes us. And Winston Churchill has a good home. And Mr. Whitehead turned out to be a nice guy after all. I guess even you don't have any complaints, Benji. Just one, said Benji, and I'm going to take care of it right now. With a look of grim determination on his face, he started across the playground. Ellen Louise and Mark gazed in the direction he was heading and realized their friend was making straight for Brad Jaworski. They ran and caught up with him. Benji, don't, begged Ellen Louise. You've been right all along, said Benji. Someone has to tell Brad about his stories, and it's going to be me. We owe it to Kids View. We owe it to the school, and we owe it to ourselves. We even owe it to Brad. Ah, Benji, whined Mark. It's been such a good day. Why spoil it by getting killed? Because it's the right thing to do, said Benji firmly. Eldridge Kestenbaum would do the same thing in my place. It's not worth it, Benji, pleaded Ellen Louise. Brad's crazy. He could really hurt you. How long before that happens to someone anyway? Benji contented. Kids View got the school into this mess, and Kids View will get it out again. If Brad clobbers me, then that's the way it goes. Now quit arguing, because I'm very close to chickening out. We'll go with you, decided Ellen Louise. Yeah, why not, shrugged Mark. I've had a good life. No, said Benji quietly. It's my job. Taking a deep breath, he left them standing there. There goes a brave and stupid guy, said Mark with admiration. His heart in his mouth, Benji marched up to the Venice Menace, threw out his chest, and said, Brad, I have to talk to you. So talk. Benji's resolve weakened as he scanned Brad's solid frame. How are you? Brad's eyes narrowed. I know why you're here, driver. You came to apologize because I didn't get my new story on the air Saturday. Benji took a deep breath. No, Brad. I came to tell you that you're never going to get your new story on the air. Not while I'm running Kids View. A bushy black eyebrow went up. Brad slapped a beefy fist into his palm. Keep talking. Benji waded in with both feet. I'm not trying to be mean, honestly, but your fuzzy and puffy stories are terrible, and everybody knows it. They're just afraid to tell you. Brad put his face about 3 inches from Benji's and looked him straight in the eye. Do you know what I could do to you for saying stuff like that to me? Okay, gulped Benji. You can kill me, but that won't change anything. The stories stink, period. I'll be dead, and they'll still stink. It isn't right for the other kids to laugh at you behind your back, and it isn't right for them to have to decorate the world with Fuzzy and Puffy because they're so scared of you. And it's definitely not right for you to go on thinking you're writing great stuff just because you're the strongest guy in the school. You're writing the same junk every week, except Fuzzy and Puffy fight over a different thing and yell different insults. And it's all bad. There, I've said it. The stories stink. He stuck out his jaw defiantly, then pulled it back in again. Sure, he was doing the right thing here. But why give Brad a target? Brad took a step back and folded his arms across his chest. Well, of course they stink. Do you think I'm stupid? I wrote them to stink. And the more I heard people telling me how great they were, the stinkier I wrote them. Got it? Benji goggled. But why? Mrs. Harris was bugging me to write an animal story, so I wrote her one, figuring that when she saw how rotten it was, she'd get off my back. Instead, she said I showed initiative, and I wound up on the radio, making an idiot of myself. I knew everyone was laughing at me. I would have laughed at me. And that's when I got mad. At Mrs. Harris? Asked Benji. No. Look, after that first show, I waited for my friends to come up and razz me and put me through the shredder over that lousy story. But they didn't. They told me I was the next Shakespeare. And I thought if my so-called friends are this scared of me, then I guess I don't have any real friends. Benji was taken aback. The Venice Menace had feelings. With a sweep of his hand, he indicated the playground and the hundreds of walking Fuzzy and Puffy billboards. But why all this? I just told you. I was mad. Getting madder by the minute. Got it? So I took all that Jaworski the Great Writer garbage they handed me, and I handed it back to them. Triple. Light dawned on Benji. You mean all this time you've been waiting for someone to tell you to stop? Brad grinned. Someone just did. Who? You, driver. Pay attention. He grabbed Benji's hand and shook it heartily. Welcome to the real world, kid. You've got guts. Benji was bug-eyed. You mean you're not going to kill me? He blurted out. Brad looked disgusted. Go away, driver. I like you, but you bother me. Nervously, Benji began to back off. No more Fuzzy and Puffy, he persisted. Eldridge Kestenbaum always liked to see agreements spelled out as clearly as possible. Yeah, no problem, shrugged Brad. It was getting boring anyway. You've seen one toilet dunking, you've seen them all. Hey, driver. Benji stopped, backing up. Thanks for the straight talk. I appreciate it. Now, get lost. You're welcome, quavered Benji, and fled. No sooner was he away from Brad than Ellen, Louise, and Mark pounced on him, questions flying. Benji, cried Mark, you're alive. What happened? What did you say to him? Added Ellen Louise. He was smiling and he shook your hand. I don't get it. What did he say to you? Are you okay? What happened between you and Brad? Benji sat down on the grass, waving his hands for quiet. What happened? What had happened? His head was spinning. I'm not sure. He finally managed to stammer. But I think maybe it's possible that we just went off together to share some catnip.